In my video on Senua's Sacrifice, I really banged on about how the themes and the gameplay tied together really well and how that created a very cohesive gaming experience. That's what made the game so impactful, that its themes and its gameplay were perfect for each other. They were an amazing fit. But this video is not about Senua's Sacrifice, it's about Sombre. And as much as I love that game, the story and the gameplay were completely unfit for each other. And I just wanted to talk about that. Sombre is a pretty short, atmospheric exploration game with some horror elements. I would describe it as horror-ish, and we'll get to that in a minute. That is developed by Introversion Software. So you're tasked with getting out of this pitch black cave using a headset and a LiDAR scanner that you can use to just scan the cave. And the cave shows up as these various little dots. That's really cool. The visual of the heat map, so red is very close to you and then light blue is quite far away, is really cool. It's a super great visual, and the gameplay itself is really fun. It's just super cool to like go into this environment, seeing absolutely nothing, and then scanning it and there's a bit of a tree or a statue or whatever it is that you're unveiling. One of the best parts of the game. No, actually, the best part of the game. That core gameplay loop of exploring your environments, scanning them, revealing more information, and then continuing to explore. Really novel, kept me engaged for pretty much the entire playthrough because it's just that fun. It's like if you've played Splatoon, how much fun just painting stuff is. Even if you're not going for the objective, just spraying and covering everything in paint, super fun. It's the same energy with Sombre. It's LiDAR scanning instead of paint. That joyful experience of basically painting the world around you kind of takes the edge off what is meant to be a pretty unsettling dark experience. If anything, having a regular lantern that gives you a very small range of view would be much scarier than a LiDAR scanner. The pitch black of the cave is meant to be a scary thing, right? There's not really dark. Like, you can't see everything, but as soon as you scan it, it's perpetually visible. There's no light, so there's no like, you walk away and then it's too far away for your torch to light it up. There's none of that. I think that really takes away from the experience. I think that takes away from the horror of it, the fear of being lost in the dark. But as much as it detracts from the horror elements, which again, we will get to, it's just really fun. Also, being able to open your map and you'll see like all the area that you've scanned, super cool. And the visual presentation of the heat map is like a super interesting way to present it. It also makes what is just an array of dots a bit easier to process. As much as I loved the LiDAR scanning experience, the gameplay doesn't really evolve past that. In that first 15 minutes, you've basically played the entire game. The upgrades that you get don't really change anything. You can scan faster. You get a blast scanner, which scans your entire screen. That's really cool. You get material mode later. So instead of showing a heat map of how far away things are, it shows you what the different materials are. There'll be like stone and a different stone, metal and wood, and then flesh. Oh, spooky. Not really. The scanning that you've done in the first 10 minutes is the same as the scanning you're going to do in the last 10 minutes. There's not a lot of difference. The only mix-up that they really threw into the equation is when they introduce water into it. When you scan water, you'll see like the dots kind of flickering and then they disappear because the water obviously is like moving, so the LiDAR doesn't stay, I guess. I don't know, it makes sense when you play it. What doesn't make sense when you play it is that there are reflections in the water, but you've got a headset on that's just displaying the LiDAR dots. So why would there be reflections in the water when the headset also can't track water because water is like rippling, so the LiDAR information gets phased out? Yeah, I don't know. It was a weird visual choice. It did look nice, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, that doesn't make sense. That's nitpicky. Anyway, moving on. So as I said earlier, I describe Sombre as horror-ish because it's not it definitely tries to be scary, but it's not really scary. The general cave atmosphere can be a little unsettling at times. You get, the water dripping sounds and the whooshy air sounds. But for the most part, you kind of settle into that pretty quickly. And then the actual scares, where I'd say they're mostly jump scares. The first one's kind of scary, probably because you're not expecting it, but then all the other scares throughout the entire game are super predictable. One of the reasons being is when you start getting towards an area where these specters are, ghosts of people that have died in the mines, your screen starts flickering. It does like the RGB split sort of thing, you know, your typical glitch animation. The first time, you know, like, ooh, okay, something's gonna happen, and then it does scare you a little bit. Mostly because it just blasts a loud noise at you. That always gets me. I don't know about everyone else, but I think most people, even if the scare isn't actually scary, getting blasted with a loud noise when it's been very quiet would scare the shit out of you. But then, yeah, like I said, that flickering thing comes up before the things happen, and it happens in really predictable places, so it doesn't really have the impact of the first one. Even when you move from the open caves and all the stalagmites and stuff into more closed spaces where they kind of go a weird direction, where it's like cultists lived in this cave, and so there's some altars and temples and sleeping quarters. None of it feels particularly off-putting. It's a lot like the back rooms or empty streets or like hotel corridors, that sort of liminal space energy where it's mildly off-putting, but there's nothing inherently scary about it. You have to put something in there to make it scary. Specters, like the one here, are they happen throughout the game, and most of the time they kind of just pop up and make a loud noise. Scary the first time, but they kind of lose their impact pretty quickly, especially when you realize that they can't hurt you. You can kind of just like walk right up to them. They don't even do anything. They just kind of stand there. So that takes away the impact. Then you're just like, okay, I only want to get away from the specter, so they stop making the loud noise. That's just really annoying. The only fail state in the game is falling off a ledge. And that's kind of it. It kills all the horror in it, because it's like, it's just really tacked on. All the horror elements in Sombre feel like an afterthought. Like, they did the cave exploring thing, the whole LiDAR scanning thing, like, this is really cool gameplay, but it needs something to spice it up. And so then they tacked on the horror elements, and they tacked on the weird cultist story to try and flesh it out. And it feels half-baked, the story. As you make your way through the cave, you dip through like dens and altars and like ritual rooms, and then back into open caves, and little bits of text come up expositing what the character is thinking. And no. They kind of like do the whole, ooh, cultist, scary. But it feels really forced. Like I said, it feels tacked on. There's not a lot of depth to it. It's really just, oh, people died here, feel uncomfortable. Didn't do a good job of making me feel uncomfortable. And like, if anything, it got annoying because it padded out the game too much, because it didn't make the game more interesting. It, if anything, took away from the gameplay, and the plot twist they're trying to shovel in the end, me and my chat figured that out in like the first 10 minutes. They were like, okay, yeah, pretty sure where the ghosts. Spoilers, I guess, but it's super obvious. It really is. All around, I really felt like the attempt at a story damaged the experience more than it fleshed it out. Also, talking about things that made the experience worse. The soundtrack. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like the soundtrack. All the tracks individually are really nice pieces, but they're all very varied, and none of them really feel appropriate. Like, it goes from like bare cave ambience to like total silence, and then like this weird folk rock tune that's like really nice. It was a vibe, but what the hell? And then like grand orchestration at the end. The music was like so varied and made so little sense that I was just left wondering what was going on. It was super strange. And again, it was another element that detracted from the gameplay. So, with all that in mind, coming back to what I was saying at the start about Senua Sacrifice and Ludonarrative harmony, how the guys over at Ninja Theory really harmonized between the story, the themes, and the gameplay. They all were so smartly interwoven with each other that it was like a really cohesive experience and everything made sense. The overall impact was increased because everything played so well together. Sombre is an example of Ludonarrative dissonance. The story, what little there is, doesn't complement the gameplay in the slightest. Or the other way around, whichever way you want to look at it. If you want to think of gameplay first or story first, that's, two completely different approaches. Both are valid. Neither complements the other. The story is just, ooh, spooky cultists, be scared, they're gonna kill you, except not really. And the gameplay is
let me scan rock.
And the gameplay is the better part of the two. It's simple, it's fun, it's great visual presentation, both in the heat map mode and in the material mode. The tacked on horror elements don't complement the gameplay in the slightest. I feel like if you were exploring the cave with like a traditional lantern or torch, those horror elements would be way scarier because that unlimited vision of the scanner where you can look back at like the very top of the map and you can see almost everything else below you. Your vision is infinite. That makes it less scary. Having limited vision is a really common way to make players feel tense. Think of like even Minecraft. You go into the caves, they're dark. The dark is scary. Then you put torches down and it's less scary. It's kind of the same thing here. Other way you could go about it is giving the LiDAR headset and scanner batteries that would run down over time. And that would force the player to move a bit more quickly, because it is a very leisurely experience for the most part, even with the horror elements in there. And then when the headset dies, like you lose all your LiDAR information, that solves the infinite vision problem. That makes it a bit more scary, and it puts pressure on the player, which that sort of tension is engaging. Alternatively, Introversion software could just strip all the horror elements out of the game entirely, and just go full out on the exploration, make the caves way more varied. That could be way more engaging, that could be way more fun. Just because it focuses on the gameplay, and the gameplay is the best part of the game. It is just fun to paint the world around you with your little LiDAR scanner, and all the horror elements just feel like an afterthought to spice it up, to flesh it out a bit, and that detracts from experience. And ultimately, I appreciate it for what it is. It's a short experience that was fun to play through because the gameplay was engaging. It needed some more depth to it. It needed more time in the oven. It needed the gameplay to evolve a bit more because, like I said, that first 10 minutes is the same as the last 10 minutes. If you see it on sale for really cheap, I would say it's worth the play. It's a fun little experience. Playing it in VR is way more fun than playing it on a flat screen because you have that sense of space. It is also a little bit scarier in VR. Not massively, still not very scary, but just scary things in VR are just scarier hands down because you're more immersed, but that's beside the point. It could be worth your time, but I'm not going to go out of my way to recommend it. If you watch a playthrough, that's kind of 90% of the experience. But yeah, that's where we're going to wrap things up because I don't really have much more to say about it. I've been very active on Twitch lately, so if you want to check out my Twitch down below, I've been doing a lot of stuff over there. Anyway, if you want to watch more backlog bust videos, right there. And if you want to see some Twitch clips, right there as well. We've got plenty of both of those. There's going to be a lot more backlog busts content coming, more analytical content, because I really enjoy writing and editing those way more. I think way more engaging. And also, Minecraft videos gross.